Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to the show right now Mr. Sean Astin. You know him as a movie star, a television star, but before we get into why you're really here, I got to talk about something that was all over the news.
Okay.
And that was you doing the Ironman
triathlon.
Yeah. One, congratulations. You're more manlier than I could ever be.
Oh, don't say that. You don't know that.
No, you did it, and I will never do that, so I can say that. But I do have to ask you, can you tell me the details? What were the events and what went through your mind to actually go and do this?
Well, I've been running marathons. I've run 10 full marathons, and this year's been very interesting. I was invited to do the Boston Marathon by the race director, Dave McGillivray, and then he actually talked to the Ironman company because he did it last year, the Kona in Hawaii. The championship is they have them all over the world, but the one that's in Hawaii is the championship. And they invited me. They sent me an email saying, how would you like to be an ambassador for Ironman? And we'll give $25,000 to your charity and like that. And I went into my wife and kids and just said, you guys, look at this email. And they sort of rolled their eyes.
Did they think it was fake?
Ha! No, they didn't think it was fake, but they're just like, it's another thing that Dad wants to do. He's always like, I'm doing Chicago Marathon. I'm doing the Marine Corps Marathon. I'm doing, so they just see me doing all this stuff, and it's a commitment for them too, because when I'm training, I'm missing out on certain things with the family, and that kind of sucks. So, but anyhow, they got behind the idea. I talked them into it, and so I spent about 4.5 months training and went to Hawaii last week on Monday and had an amazing. It's like Super Bowl week. It was every day was a build up. There were interviews, there was training, there was going out in the water, and then Saturday, which is just 4 days ago now, I did the 2.4 mile swim. It's a 112 mile bike ride and a 26.2 mile swim or run. Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
that is,
and I feel great. I feel like $1 million, except that I have blisters on my feet, and I never get blisters.
I was going to say, if you go to Sean Astin on his Instagram there, SEAN for those who don't know. There's a photo of you sticking your foot right into the camera, and I'm guessing those are your daughters.
Those are my daughter. Two of my three daughters.
Everyone's looking in disgust as your foot is falling apart.
Yeah, my foot. There's blisters on the bottom. I never get blisters, but because it was so hot, it was very, very hot conditions, very windy conditions. You're pouring ice and water all over yourself for the whole run, so that water runs down and it gets into your socks and shoes. So you're basically running in wet shoes and socks for me. It was 6 hours, and when I took and it hurt every step from mile 2. Was very, very painful, and so that was my big accomplishment, was running through that pain. And then I took my shoes off, and you're like, those blisters are going to take a while. So now walking through the airport yesterday and walking into the studio here, I'm like, my muscles feel fine. I could go and run today, but and my heart feels good, and everything feels good, just blisters.
Right. What's the first event that they start you with? Is it the swimming?
Yeah, you start out treading water, waiting for the big cannon to go off. Bang, the cannon goes off. And you swim out for 1.2 miles.
Okay.
I don't know if you know exactly from, like when you're driving in a car, it probably doesn't seem like that much. But when you're swimming, you can't see the far cone, the buoy. Like you go from buoy to buoy to buoy. You can't see the far buoy. It's too far away. And there's a little boat at the turn. You can't see the boat. So you swim out there. It takes about it takes the pros much, much less time. But it took me about 45 minutes to get out there. And then as you make the turn, all of a sudden the swells were picking up. So there's kind of white caps and it was pulling on you, so you'd swim a few pedals or a few strokes, and all of a sudden you'd go backwards, and then you'd swim a few. You just wanted to make sure you were hopefully, every 10 seconds you were making forward progress. Then you get out, you go through transition 1, throw on your bike stuff, jump on the bike. You go for 56.
So you get out from swimming, and you have to go right to the bike.
Yeah,
is there any kind of downtime? Like, do you have a couple minutes?
I had a
yourself,
9-minute transition, which is very slow.
So you have to change in that 9 minutes?
There's bags all set up for you, so you run in, put some fresh water on you because you just got out of the salt water and you don't want to spend the next 10 hours in salt water.
Sticking, yeah.
So you just kind of wash yourself off. You go in, you grab your bag, you open it up, put on your bike shoes, your gloves, your helmet. You already have the clothes you're going to wear underneath your swim skin. So you pull your swim skin off, which is like a very, very thin. It looks like a wetsuit, but it's just a thing that you wear. So and then you run out, you get your bike, which is waiting for you. Jump on your bike and you go for 56 miles. In that race, it's northwest to a place called Hawi, and you turn around, come 56 miles back, and then you jump out. My transition was very, very slow. It was like
so it's not even going one way and going into the next leg of the event. You're going there and back, and then going to the next event. Yeah,
different triathlons work differently, but this one is the transition area is like it's pocket. So you go out, you come back to it, then you go out, you come back to it, then you go out and come back to it again.
Jesus. Well, like I said, you're more manlier than I'll ever be, and I salute you on that, sir. But you said you've been doing marathons for a long time. Do you ever do the fun marathons like the ones at Disney?
I've done maybe 18 of the Disney ones.
So you've got a bunch of the big like gold and silver Ds hanging around?
I love the medals. I love them. Sometimes I race to the medals, meaning I'll this one that we just did, the Disneyland half marathon, right? And they always do weekends. You can do the 5K on Friday, the 10K on Saturday, and the half marathon on Sunday, or the one that in January this year you do the 10K or the 5K on Thursday, then the 10K Friday, half marathon Saturday, and the full marathon Sunday. And
right.
And then you get an extra medal if you do the half and the full, and you get an extra medal if you do all 4 of them. So by the time you get on the airplane, you got like you got a whole thing of all these cool medals.
My sister-in-law is really into Disney and actually started doing the marathons, I'll say at least 10 years ago, just because it's Disney and just to get those medals and everything you said, all the little achievements that you get for doing each kind of marathon.
I'm sure we've done a bunch together. I'm sure of it.
You might have. I don't know.
But I meet a lot of people, and they're like, "Oh, we ran the Dopey together. We ran the Rebel Challenge," because now they're doing Star Wars ones and stuff. But the cool thing about Disney is they've sort of figured out a formula. It's called Run Disney is the organization that puts them on. They do. It's about healthy food choices, fitness. Because you go into the park and it's all great sugary, foods and that turkey kind of stuff, but turkey legs and stuff. But now they're appealing to families to come out, do these events, and then go into the park and have a ball. So I speak at all their convention or the expos and stuff, and I've done the color runs and nighttime runs, and I just love the running community. I now have a charity that I run for that benefits after school running programs for elementary school kids and.
Right.
In lower income areas. So yeah, it's my wife said to me the other day, it's my jam.
You literally are a guy that just doesn't like sitting around and waiting for the next project to pop up. If you're not working, you're doing these kind of things. So you're constantly not home, I guess. So your family must be really loving that.
Well, they hate it, and it's bad. And I have to make an effort. Like you have to choose to be together, and you have to choose when you're together to make that time when you are together real. But I guess for me, like the mental health component, like I get so amped up and I go left and go right and do a lot of stuff. When I'm running, I'm a lot more stable of an individual, a lot easier to be around actually for everybody, including my family and myself. Mm-hmm. But, I've been around for a long time making movies and stuff. And it's very easy to have the movies that you've done in the past become your identity. And in a way, it's fantastic to have a body of work that people can enjoy. Rudy, Goonies, Lord of the Rings. In Hawaii, people are all about 51st States.
Right.
Like all those things. It's fantastic. But I'm not comfortable just having that be who I am. So when I'm setting these big goals and doing these events where it's immediate, it's current, it's impressive, it just makes me feel like I'm controlling my own identity a little bit more rather than having the past control it.
Based on what you just said there about not letting your past projects form your identity, how did you take it then? Because I know there were some parts of the triathlon where there was crowds and they were actually yelling Rudy at you.
They were yelling Rudy. They were Goonies. People were in costume. It was a 26.2 mile parade, basically. And what you notice is I would smile and wave and talk back at folks. And, people were it was the most of that. I've never, ever had that complete of kind of, feedback, auditory feedback. People would jump out and want to take pictures with you. But at a certain point, there is a cutoff. You have to, in order to be a quote unquote Iron Man and get the prize and have the guy say, Sean Astin, you are an Iron Man.
Yeah.
I realized that I would try and just give a little nod or a hand wave or something like that so people knew that I heard them and I appreciated them. But I need to, and one of the things I love about running is that once you start, everybody's got something in common. We're all moving from point A to point B. And so I was hoping towards the end of it, like I hope people didn't think that I didn't love what they were doing and what they were saying. But at a certain point I had to, it was painful. I was in pain, and I need to put my head down and just do my thing. So anyhow, I never mind the Rudy chant. I never mind any of that. But
that kind of crowd reaction that you got is something normally that's reserved for like if you went to Comic-Con or something like that, for that kind of, like you said, costumes turned out and everything.
Well, in that setting, it's usually reserved for people who actually win races. I'm like among the
but not
300
dressing up as your past characters and chanting your past characters' names.
Comic book conventions now are ubiquitous.
Yeah, you didn't go to New York Comic Con this year.
No, because I was doing the other triathlon.
Yeah,
I actually Skyped in. I FaceTimed in the day before from the shoreside where I was looking at the turnaround for the swim in the triathlon, and they, Greg Sipes, who plays one of the Ninja Turtles, held up the phone and they put a video of it up, and people were like, "Wow!" So it was actually kind of fun.
Before the panel, I was talking to Seth Green and Hoon Lee. Is that his name?
Hoon Lee, who's on The King and I now, yeah.
Who plays Splinter on the Ninja Turtles. And
he's on Broadway now.
And Rob Paulson too. And I said, "So where's Sean at?" And Seth just kind of almost rolling his eyes, but leaning back and he goes, "You don't even want to know what he's doing." And I'm like, "I kind of do. What is he doing?" And then he starts saying, he's like, "He's doing the Iron Man." I'm like, "Really?" And he goes, "No, I'm kidding." I mean, he goes, "No, I'm serious. He's doing the Iron Man. He's been prepping for this for a long time." And then they said, "God bless you for doing that," because they all admitted they couldn't do it either. But
they could if they wanted to. People are capable of so much more than they realize. That's what I learned about myself, is that there were things that I achieved that I really wouldn't have even dreamed to think about. Swimming out in the open water past the breakwater was really scary for me. But I wanted to do it, and so I did it.
Well, congratulations to you on that. And let's talk about why you're actually here for your new project, Woodlawn. For those who don't know, it's a period piece based on a true story back in the early to mid 70s in a racially tense area of Alabama, Birmingham, which is infamous for being, probably at one point the most segregated city in the United States.
It's like a flashpoint for civil rights drama. People look to Birmingham and Selma and those places as being, really, indicative of the worst kinds of that. So, yeah.
Right. So this movie is centered around football, with the Alabama coach inviting University of Southern California to come and to play.
Bear Bryant, he invites SC. That's at the very, very beginning of the movie. Right. Sort of the tail end of that experience is a little tease at the beginning of the movie of what the ultimate mission of the movie is. What he goes up to one of the SC players, African American player, and says, what a gutsy game he played. And for an Alabama figure of nationwide importance to, first of all, go into the opposing team's locker room, that's not really something you do.
Right.
But to reach his hand out, essentially to an African American player, it was a signal. It was a signal to the South and to the world that it's time. There's something about the guts of these African American players and their talent that it's just way past time to stop the way they're thinking and to let this inevitable transition happen.
And having John Voight play Paul Bryant,
Bear Bryant,
Bear Bryant, sorry. Really, just from that intro alone, you're just watching this and you're like, this is intense. Like, it's making the point, even though the point was already made. But seeing it lay out in front of your eyes there, you're watching like, okay, this is going to be good.
Well, what you're seeing is he's at the elite college level. He's at Alabama.
Yeah.
And Alabama's vying for a national title.
They're rock stars.
They are. You
see them coming off their buses. There's crowds,
they're basically
like 10 people deep surrounding these buses as they arrive to wherever they're
like
playing.
Gladiators. They're Roman, they're just the figures who are, I guess you're right when you say the rock stars, but that's at the university level, the collegiate level. What's happening downstream in high schools and in elementary schools? And what you realize is that the desegregation process, where they started, forcing black kids and white kids to go to school together, it was horrible.
Right. The governor stood in front of one of the schools and said, your kids are not coming into these white
segregation
schools.
Now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever, and yet there was this a groundswell against that. There was the federal government sort of forcing the schools to allow, with military presence, to allow kids in there. But those stories are what we know from the news. There's a trillion other stories that happen on interpersonal levels and in individual schools.
Which this is what it focuses on. Woodlawn, is a high school in that area.
Right. But there's another important fact about American cultural life that was happening at that point that is really what the movie is the purpose of the movie. And that is that there was an evangelical movement happening. It was really the first time that you would see people like Reverend Billy Graham having a service in the Cotton Bowl and 50,000 people would show up to participate in it, and everyone lighting a candle, and this idea of unity, and so Christ's mission and story of peace and forgiveness, and so
that tends to be left out a lot when you see it, like say on the History Channel and things like that, when they go back and show news scopes and stories of that time. It's just one man versus another man, that kind of thing. But they really
think of Martin Luther King Jr.
They don't include the religious aspect to it.
You think of Martin Luther King Jr. You think of the crossing the bridge. You think of certain things where there was a flashpoint between violence and the law,
right.
And when you had Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., who gave big speeches and big religious speeches, was speaking on moral grounds.
I think people forget sometimes too when seeing that even though as important as that was, that he was, that even though he's Reverend Martin Luther King, he was a reverend, a faith leader, and people always politicize it. Like it's more.
It's in a way, I think
and keep that aspect out.
This is Sean talking and not the movie,
mm-hmm.
But in a way, religion is politics,
right?
Because people are sharing their worldview. I know we're supposed to say, religion and government are separate, that you keep church and state separate.
Yeah.
But in a sense, when you have people who are advocating for a political position and their background is really informing why they do it, with Martin Luther King Jr., he gave this huge speech in a church right before he was assassinated, where he essentially predicted almost his assassination. But a movie like this is like, what happened a few years later? The political record, the historical record, the cultural record, we kind of drop off for a little bit. But what happened was, and this is what's interesting about this movie, is these guys, the Irwin brothers, John and Andy Irwin, they wanted to tell their father's story. Their father was, before he was a state senator in Alabama, he was a talk show host, a radio show host, and before he was a radio show host, he was a chaplain. And he was deeply moved by what they called the Jesus freak movement, which was this time where this evangelical movement was happening, and Jesus was pictured on the cover of Time magazine in kind of a tie-dye look, and so he went uninvited to this one high school where there was all these problems happening, because he felt called by God to just go there. This true story. And he basically said to the coach, like, I need to talk to your team. And the coach, no, you're not going to talk to my football team. And
right.
But at a certain point, they were out of ammo. There were knife fights in the hallway. And finally he thought, I guess it can't hurt to give this religious guy, this chaplain, a few minutes with my players to give them an inspirational talk. Well, the talk went on for 3 hours, this one particular meeting that he had with the ball players. And he stood up and basically said, have you lived with violence for so long in your lives that you think that's how it's supposed to be? Because it doesn't have to be that way. You can actually choose something different. You can make a decision right here, right now, not to live with hate in your heart. And for him, he was there to preach the gospel. He said, you can choose Jesus. Jesus is the way for you to, and he got them all, white and black, in that moment to stand up and with their faith, just agree to live for Christ. And it was a public school, so that caused a lot of drama, because you're not allowed to do that kind of activity in a public school.
Right.
But whatever feeling people have about religion, whether they are Christians or Jews or Muslims or whatever, just as a piece of, and you started this out, I appreciated it by saying it's a historical piece. It happened, and for these football players, and then for their community, and for their crosstown rivals where there was violence, they all came together with their faith, and it was a wonderful year. And it ended up in a really kind of fueling what was the greatness that was in them and that they had on the football field, free from all that violence. And they ended up having the most well-attended high school football game in the history of the state of Alabama, and in Birmingham. And it was like, if you build it, they will come, from Field of Dreams. The cars, it took them hours to load everybody in. They had never taken that many. They didn't have that many tickets. And so the football players were like, can we go out and play? Can we go out and play? Like, wait, the stadium is still filling up with people to see our game. So, and it was just, and they would pray together. So this is a movie that is made by a couple of people with love for their father and for their community. and it tells the story of the coach who has a conversion story, of the player Tony Nathan, who became in real life one of the all-time NFL greats for the Dolphins. His story. It's a story about Bear Bryant, using his influence to endorse not just a player, not just a school, but a whole way of being.
A movement.
Yeah, it really was. And it took a lot of guts for him to do that. And so anyway, so that's what the movie is. And it comes out Friday, and we're really proud. And I get to give these great religious speeches for any actor that, you look down on a page and you just don't know what you're going to see. And for me, I got to play Hank Irwin, this chaplain who, guileless, comes into the school. And, it's always, you always got to wonder when guys walk in and they, like Dan Aykroyd from Blues Brothers, I'm on a mission from God. And you're like, oh, brother, here, this guy's on a mission from God. But when you listen to what he says and you see the impact it has, you're like, okay, maybe that's not such a threatening thing. Maybe that's not such an aberrant thing for, even a secular world to appreciate a little bit.
I only have a few more minutes with you. Where does God and religion, if you want to talk about it, where does God and religion fall into your life now?
Well, I consider myself a person of faith. I've read the Bible cover to cover twice, but I am no expert on the gospel. I do not feel called to evangelize. I'm a little different from the movie in that, one of the things that Christians feel very strongly about, as all the big religions do, they believe that we believe in that there's one way. The Bible says the way, right, the truth, and the light. And so there's a moment where we hold up the finger one. Well, I resist that because I want to be inclusive. And so when I think about my faith as a Christian, what I like about Christ's message is peace, forgiveness, love. There's a lot of stuff that comes down through the Bible that a lot of devout Christians would take literally that I just don't take on board. Just certain things, and I'm happy to talk about them, but that's, so we don't go to church that often.
Mm-hmm.
We occasionally will find ourselves in church, but I feel very comfortable in church when I go to church. I feel very connected to people of all different faiths, and atheists. So I consider myself a humanist, peace-loving humanist, but I also was baptized in the Lutheran church because my wife had our 3 daughters baptized in the church, even though she said she didn't have that faith, but then, she is. So we're all St. John's Lutheran Church in LaPorte, Indiana, is where all 5 of us were baptized. So there's that.
All right.
But I also, as an actor, I have no problem doing movies or playing parts that would stand in direct opposition to Christian tenets, because my mission as an actor is to serve the story, the narrative that different filmmakers or different writers are telling, and I'm willing to use my acting instrument to help tell those stories too. So I've done 4 Christian films. I'm very proud of all of them. I like that Christian films, the quality of them is getting better. Just the production value is getting better, but the way the stories are being told are more engaging. The characters are easier to follow. So I'm more than happy to keep making Christian films as long as Christian filmmakers want to hire me to be in them. So that's a big answer to a short question.
So check out Woodlawn. It's in theaters right now. If you're a fan of Sean Astin, you're going to love this movie. It's very intense. Like I said, it's a historical piece. It was a pivotal time for this country without people really knowing it, that it was going to become that. Some bold moves were made during this time period that changed the course of history for that area.
Mostly like in the South. Like you think of the South as the place where this really happened, but where it was so prominent and so obvious. But what I would say is to your audience is that the movie is preachy, but in a really interesting way. And so I don't think even though the movie is sort of evangelizing people in the sense that it's trying to share, the filmmakers are trying to share their faith, their father's faith, the Christian faith with a broad audience, that I don't think it's threatening. I actually think it's an invitation to sort of go like, oh, okay, that's how people feel about it. That's one application of that, of religion in that way, in that place. So I'm hoping that people will give it a shot because it's, as a football movie, it's shot in a really cool way. You like the football stuff. The directors worked for ESPN Films. So like the actual look of it is cool. The performances are cool. The moment of American history that's being depicted is really compelling. It's directly relevant to Ferguson and Baltimore and all these places where there's racial conflict still. It's nice to know that not only is there a historical kind of buildup to this that we don't all know about, but there's also ways in which that communities have combated the violence. You know, there may be many ways. This is one way that it worked for some people, and it's worth looking at.
Sean Astin, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. I'll say growing up with you, not watching.
You're younger than me.
I don't know, maybe. Growing up with you, and I've also been a big fan of both your parents and their work. Goonies 2, any information as we go out?
No new information except to say that I maintain it will get made some point, maybe in my lifetime. I'd be happy to be a part of it if they want me to be a part of it, and I love that people keep that fire burning because it just reaffirms to me that there is magic and adventure in everyone, and they want more of it when it feels really good.
Sean, thank you so much. Next time you're around, I would love to talk to you again.
Yeah, I love it. You're awesome, dude.
Take care.